Hi, I'm Jennifer from Shabby Fabrics. I have a fun project for you today. This beautiful patriotic quilt was made with a template set from Marty Michelle. It's called Starry Path. And I'm going to show you how easy this block goes together using her amazing templates. And by the way, the quilt meets the minimum size standard for Quilt of Valor. So if you want to gift this to a serviceman or servicewoman, it does meet the minimum size standards for Quilt of Valor, which I love. So be sure to go to our homepage. On the very bottom, there's a link that says free downloads. Go ahead and click that. You're looking for the Patriotic Starry block quilt. You'll download and print those pages. They're going to have the specific sizes that you need to cut each of your fabrics to. So I won't go into those details with you now over that. You can just print that and cut your fabrics and get them ready to go. I want to point out that the templates, there's A, B, C, and D. We went ahead, cut our fabrics, and simply labeled them A, B, C, and D so that we didn't get lost in this project. I've had that happen to me before where I have all these stacks of fabric out of the same fabric, such as this, and I got a little lost in where each piece goes. So I found that labeling, particularly with this, has been helpful. The other thing that we found a new product on the market called Maker tape, and because these templates are very slick, they kind of just slide right along fabric. This Maker tape, I don't know if you can see it here, it has kind of a texture in the back. You can still see through to your background fabric, but it just gives that template a little more grip. So get some Maker tape. I'm going to use that. I'm going to put that on my big ruler as well, just so that I'm not slipping around and make a miscut. So we're going to get fabrics. A and C are going to be the cream that we're going to be using. And we actually have two creams. Notice how we alternated the creams that we're using just to give the quilt a little more dimension. And the cool thing is once you know how to make that block, you're going to just keep making that block. And the only difference between this block here and this block here is the background fabric. Notice how this star fabric, it's a really cool Venetex fabric. It has a gradation in it, and just depending on where it lands, it looks like a different fabric, but it's the same fabric. It's just you're getting a different spot of that fabric. So I love that. And that's why we picked it. It had a lot of personality. So this is of course available as a kit, but if you're using your own fabrics, I would encourage you step out and maybe use a fabric that has an ombre or gradient, because it'll give you the same effect. So now that I have all of my fabrics labeled and I know which template goes with which, because we marry that up, of course. The template A goes with the fabric that I have listed as A, and C and B and D as well. Now, if you've never used Marty Michelle's templates, I'll tell you something. That lady, Marty Michelle, and her husband Richard are just a neat couple. I consider Marty and Richard personal friends, and they're brilliant. They have thought through this whole thing. They have what's called engineered corners, and I'm going to show you how to use the engineered corners. The other thing that I love about their templates is they're multi-size. What I mean by that is, and I'll show you against the white field, it's easier to see. On this particular template set, you can make a 6-inch block. You can use, if you want the 6-inch block, you'll use the footprint from around those two sides and that bottom line. For the 9-inch block, that's what we're doing. We'll be using that second line, and for a larger 12-inch block, you would be using the full size of that template. So I love that about Marty's templates, that she always has the multi-size. A lot of times when I bought templates, it just gives you one size. So if that's not the size you were looking for, that's not really a useful template. So I find a lot of value in the perfect patchwork template system. So let's get out our first fabric, which is going to be our A. And I'm going to show you a lot of cool features about the engineering that went into making these templates. So with Marty's system, she has you pre-cut strips to a certain size, depending on what size blocks, 6-inch, 9 blocks, or 12. All of that information is included in the book. However, so that you don't even have to necessarily reference the book, it's all in the free download. Strip has already been cut. Now, I'm going to take this to my fabric and I'm going to lay that line where the 9 is, the solid line, along the bottom. Just note that the dashed line is your seam allowance. It's the standard 1/4 inch seam allowance. No surprises there. This is key. This is really important because this is not a symmetrical shape. It's very important once you have your fabric cut out that you stack everything right side up. If you leave it with wrong sides, you know how when you cut a strip of fabric, you've got this way, and then of course that is wrong side up. There's no problem cutting it that way initially, but before you bring it to the template, make sure everything is stacked so that the right side is up. Otherwise, the block will not come out. It will be going, certain parts will be going the wrong direction. So make sure you do not skip that step. So I'm gonna stack. I always like to cut multiple things at a time. There's no reason that I can only cut one strip at a time. Let's cut a couple strips at a time. I'm gonna line up my template such that that 9, that solid line right beneath my 9 is exactly going along there. And notice I'm using a spinning mat. And it's just so nice to use a spinning mat. And I'm just going to put this off to the side so that I'm not picking up my fabric. Having the spinning mat just increases your accuracy and safety, because then you're not tempted to cut under your arm, kind of do this whole thing, which I have definitely admittedly done, and nicked myself even, and that was really painful. So that's how you're going to get the first one out of there. Now let me just bring this back. I want to show you how you would cut subsequent ones. Okay, we just did this cut, right? Let's see, like trying to figure out how I got that in here. We were like this, I believe. We put that there. Now to do the next cut, I'm not going to flip it over. You always want to make sure that letter is right side up. I'm simply going to rotate that and lie that along in the same fashion, and I'm going to make that cut. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that. So you can see with very efficient cutting, you're getting a lot out of a very small amount of fabric. So we'll cut that one, and then you can cut your last one. Now, what is this business about these engineered corners? I want to point out to you about these corners. These purple things mean something, and let's talk about that real quick. Part of the perfect patchwork system is that it just kind of locks together like a puzzle. If you've done any kind of triangle sewing, you know that when you sew things together, you get what's called kind of dog ears. There's those little pieces that kind of poke out on the ends, and you kind of trim them off. With Marty's system, that's all taken care of. Now I want you to note something. Note this purple section. What we're going to do is we're going to back this template out, and we're going to basically cut that tip off. And I'm going to use a little something that's going to help me out, because let me show you the first way to do it, and let me show you how we discovered a little bit of an assistance with I love this pen. I use it, and I think probably every video I've ever done. The friction pen, now available in black, red, and blue, and we even have refills on certain colors, and that's great. So, and plus you can just write with it. I'm always writing notes in my sewing room, so it's not just for marking. You can just write with it. So let me show you, if I don't use the friction pen, what I would be dealing with. I would have to watch me just slide this back, and I'm going to slide it back until this shape basically fills the footprint with nothing hanging over, right? Here I went back too far. I'll exaggerate that. Here I didn't go far enough, because you can see the template's overhanging my fabric. I'm supposed to slide back until I believe that fabric is sitting exactly underneath my template, and then I would make that cut. Well, because I might not be precisely where I want to be, one thing you might want to consider doing, let me take us back to where we were. Let me line us up. If I know, and I do know, and now you do too, that area in the solid purple is going to be cut away. One thing that we did, actually Kate thought of this, she's the one that really puts these videos and these ideas together, bless her heart, thank you Kate, is she realized that if we slide that off to the side ever so slightly and just mark that area, it just helps. It's like another confirmation that when I slide back, look at that. You see how I'm right at that mark? Now I can see where I was initially going to slide back to, ended up being the exact same spot, but I'm being very careful. Now hold this steady, very steady. We're going to make a cut here, and we're going to make a cut here. All right. Now, same story. We have this that solid purple means that fabric needs to go away. I'm just going to rotate this. I don't think I need to mark with my purple pen because it's not nearly as big of an area. I'm simply going to slide the template back until it covers. It's right on top of that fabric. Hold steady. Check it one more time, and let's cut. All right. Okay. Now, I recommend just doing all of the A's and just getting that over with. Now, sometimes, let me step back a bit. Personally, I would recommend you make one block and make sure everything's working perfectly, then go for it. I'll cut all the rest of your A's, cut all the rest of your B's, cut all the rest of your C's and your D's, and just go on. But I do like to make sure before I cut the whole thing out that I did get that right, because I definitely have made that mistake before. We're going to set that aside. Now, C, there's nothing unique about that. Same thing. You're going to make sure you use the 9 on that. And I do want to point out something about this template that surprised me when I saw it, in fact, because I was expecting the top of that template. Let me show you on the paper. You see how that top is not parallel with this bottom line? And I thought, I wonder if there was an engineering mistake there. No, there's no engineering mistake. Marty and Richard knew that angle needed to be slightly off of parallel with the line down here, and that's just meant to be that way. So for that reason, with the other templates you're going to use, the fabric is the exact footprint of that template. With this, it's just slightly, it's not going to be flush at the top, and don't worry, it's not supposed to be. You're going to cut this out the same way. Cut, and then again, that corner goes the solid purples. You're going to slide the templates back, getting your engineered corners, and you're going to do all that for your piece C's. With your piece B and D, as you can imagine, we're using a different colored fabric for that. So with the piece C, you're going to need 4 of those per block, and that's these larger pieces. For the piece A, you're going to need 4 of those per block. And again, all of that's in the download. Don't worry about writing that down right now. With template B and D, because we chose a different fabric each time for our starry block, you'll only need 1 of each of those colors because we changed it up each time. Again, all in the download. No surprises with these templates. You're going to use them the same exact way. Lining them up, you've got a very large area here that you need to cut away. Decide whether you want to just slide back and go for that. Maybe use the friction pen and mark it, just like I did with template A. And let's take a look at template B. I don't think there's any surprises on that either. No, very straightforward. On this one, because it's very angled, not running parallel with the 9-inch mark or the 12-inch or any of those. It's at a very specific angle. Your piece is a little bit bigger just to compensate for you being able to get that. Bottom line, get everything cut out, making sure everything is stacked upright. I can't emphasize that enough. You're going to be very disappointed if it's not stacked up because it's simply not going to work. So all of my pieces are cut out, right? So let's go to the next step and the assembly part. That's the part we're all excited about in the first place. Now, not only was the spinning mat so useful in cutting everything out, keeping me Safe and accurate. Those are two very happy words in my world. I'm now going to use my mat as I have all of my pieces, and I'm going to lay things out. So of course the center is the center of my block, and I have the vertical axis as well as the horizontal axis, and I'm going to lay everything out, and I really recommend that you do this so everything comes out exactly how it's supposed to. So I'm using this as my guide to how to lay everything out, and I do this for all of the quilts because I have sewn far too many quilts together wrong, a block together wrong, because I thought, I've been doing this forever. I don't need to lay this stuff out ahead of time. Yes, I do. I'm as prone today to mistakes as I was when I first started quilting. That hasn't changed. So do take the time to go ahead and do that. And once we have this, sometimes you kind of have to figure out how does this piece go? So it looks like that one goes like this, and we're just going to lay everything out. And then we're going to start sewing some stuff together, or at least we sewed it. I won't sew it on camera. You don't need to watch me sew. All right, but I want to show you how everything's laid out. Does that all look correct? Let's double check everything. That looks correct to me. Now, let's go ahead and lay out the other pieces. These are the larger sections. Let's see here. That's going to lay out like that. And we'll go around like this and lay everything out. And I would leave that in that position and then just take things in a very specific way to the sewing machine. And I'll show you what I recommend. And you might have your own methodology. If you've been sewing for any length of time, you probably do. This is just one way that I recommend. Okay, does that look right? Does that look like that site picture? And once it's sewn together, I believe everything is correct here. So the first thing that we're going to do is, this was our piece A and this was our piece B. So we're going to simply go right sides together. Look how the engineered corners, watch this. When I flip this over, look how they simply lock in right there in that corner and down in that corner. There is no guesswork. So I'm just going to set that right there, and I'm going to go flip those over just like this, and I'm going to make a little stack. And I'm very religious about this when I take things to my sewing machine. Now, did I mess that up? Yes, I want to sew that in that arrangement. So this is going to come here like this. Let me get that in my order like that. And this one like this. And then, I did it again. So let's do that like that. Yes, because it's going to open up like that. Yep. And I would take this over to my sewing machine using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to start at that point and come down my 1/4 inch, and we press to the dark side. You may have a preference. You may choose to press open. Do whatever you're comfortable doing. We went ahead and did that step ahead of time, and we just pressed to the dark. So now I'm going to, and I strongly recommend, as you're getting this actually sewn and pressed, put it back into position. Don't try to pick this whole thing up at once. Just don't do it. So that one goes like that. And this one goes like this. As you would suspect, the next piece, again, look at how the engineered corners just click into position. Look at that. It's beautiful. And you're just going to simply sew a 1/4 inch and then turn and press. And you'll do the same thing here and here and there. And we've done that ahead of time, so let me replace that. So you're seeing how this whole thing is coming together here. So we've got that side and this. I love things that are so precise. There's something about that is very satisfying to me. I think a lot of people feel that way. And this is a very precise project using templates, and I just love precision. So once that step is done, and then, so I'll show you what the next would be, is you're going to simply bring this to here. Again, look at those awesome corners. They lock in. There's no guesswork. Right sides together, right sides together, right sides together. So all 1/4 of an inch. Now we'll bring our sections together here. And we are getting very close to being able to sew our block together at this point. As you can imagine, having an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance is going to be very important for all of this to come together in the center. And then at this point, as you would suspect, you're simply right sides together, probably pressing the seam open at that point. There's a lot happening now. I would just kind of shorten my stitch length, so 1/4 of an inch, and press open. Same here, and then simply sew the top to the bottom, and then you have your block. Now, as you can see from the quilt behind me, this quilt is laid out what's called on point. We certainly could have, and this is pretty too. You don't have to do on point. This is a beautiful block in and of itself if you just wanted to sew blocks side by side. We turned that. Now, just know this, if you do decide to do the diagonal layout, you want to make sure that all of your blocks are laid out, and maybe you want to change it up. Maybe you want to have it so that they're alternating. We made it so that they were all the same exact fabric was upright. But again, you decide what you want to do, and when you lay, that's why I lay everything out. I strongly recommend you lay everything out. Now, when you do blocks on point, something unique happens. You have to create setting triangles and corner triangles. In this specific, for a 9-inch block in this setting, you're going to get your fabric, and the measurements will be again on the download. And how you make setting triangles is getting a large square to a very specific size. There's a formula, and we're going to have a download. Actually, I think it's just going to be, probably be a download or maybe a page you can reference, where it's going to show you how to calculate setting triangles and corner triangles, because it is not intuitive. It's a formula. For this specific project, the measurements will be on your download. Once you have your square, this is again for these are called setting triangles, and those are corner triangles. For the setting triangles, you're going to go point to point. I should have done this at a different angle, because now I'm doing one of those kind of crazy cuts, but I don't want to move things right now. Boy, I wish they had bigger spinning mats. I've already thought it would be great to have a bigger spinning mat. So you have 4. From every 1 square that you cut, you get 4 setting triangles. And that's the part that's sitting right here in that slot. For the corner triangles, it's just 1 square cut on the diagonal. And I've got one of those here. So for your corner triangles, it's just a single cut. So you're just going to go. Now, of course, now these are unbiased, right? They're on the true 45. There's some stretch there. So be careful handling that fabric at that point, because it is stretchy. So once we have all of those cut, and I've already done some ahead of time, when you lay out a quilt like this, you want to lay all your blocks out again in the orientation that you prefer, fitting your setting triangles and quarter triangles so you see the whole thing. As you can imagine, you're going to be doing some diagonal piecing to get all of that together. So you've got your block here, and you're going to be sewing 1 here and 1 here, pressing, and then doing the next row and the next row. So the piecing is on the diagonal because it has to be. That's what happens when you choose an on-point layout, which is what we've done here. So I just wanted to show you what that was like. So if you've never done an on-point quilt, don't be worried. There's nothing tricky about it. It's just a little bit different. There's that triangle that we cut, right? So you're just going to, this is the one thing I want to point out about setting triangles. Because you have 1 corner that's 90 degrees, and you have 1 corner that's not 90 degrees, it's 45, line up the side, that's the 90-degree corner, and that point is going to hang over. It's supposed to. If that triangle point came to here, when you turn this, it's going to be wrong. See how it has to. I can't emphasize this enough. I want you to really see this. Let me do it against this so you see it. Watch again. So I've got my setting triangle, right? That side is longer than my block because it has to be. It's always an aspect of triangles. Line up that corner. Don't start here. Start here. Line it up, pin. You're going to have the point of that triangle hanging over by 1/4 of an inch, and it's supposed to. And you're going to pin. I would start sewing from that point, and then when you turn, it'll be exactly where it needs to be. Same story here. Start where you have the 90-degree, so that little tip's going to be hanging over. And by all means, if you want to just trim that away, see, that's the dog ears I talked about earlier. If Marty Michelle made setting triangles, I bet she had to have engineered corners. And of course, you can always engineer corners with any template. I could always go in if I wanted to and use her templates to trim up those corners, but that's a discussion for another day. You get the point. When there's setting triangles, there's that little tip hanging over, and don't worry about it. It's supposed to be. So when you put on that corner triangle, at this point, this is the same piece here, except with the corner triangle. That's this section of the quilt right here. This section, same thing. Now in this instance, it's going to hang over a little bit more as well, and you're just trying to average that. We trimmed off those tips right there. In fact, I think I just did that. So they're hanging over ever so slightly. Make sure wherever it hangs over here is the same amount here, and you'll be centered up, sew it, and press to the outside. And you will continue doing that with all of the rows. And of course, the inner borders, outer borders, that's all included in the download. So I can't encourage you enough to pick up the Starry Path Perfect Patchwork templates. They're a lot of fun. The block looks complicated, and as we broke it down, it isn't complicated, it just looks complicated. So if you like what I taught you today, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're always coming out with more quilting and DIY videos at Shabby Fabrics.